Good morning, everyone. Dan Bates, President and CEO, Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and we're glad you could join us this morning. We are on Zoom, so I'm sure the speaker won't mind if you have questions during the presentation to ask questions and interrupt her. If you're on Facebook Live, type those questions in and we will get them answered for you. And today we're going to be talking about sprouting change, so stay tuned for that. Who's doing self-introductions? Tiffany, I'm turning
I will.
to you.
Right. Hi, I'm Tiffany Grubb, Director of Marketing at the Greater Hamilton Chamber. I'm just going to go around my screen. So introduce yourself and what company you're with. We will start with Annette Landsman.
Hi, as Tiffany said, I'm Annette Landisman. I work at SELF, which is a nonprofit, the acronym for Supports to Encourage Low-Income Families.
All right. Felix. Looks like muted. We'll come back, Felix. Jason Sharp.
Oh, hello. I'm just here to watch. Thank you.
All right. Jason Michael Miller.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Michael Miller with the Greater Hamilton Chamber.
Felix.
Yeah, Felix Russo, the New Life Mission.
All right. Laura.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Merrill with the Greater Hamilton Chamber.
Awesome. I think that is everybody. So Lori and Crimson, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, well, I'm Laurie Sharp-Page. I'm going to be doing the bulk of our presentation today. I'm here with me with my co-founder, Crimson McDonald. We together are the leaders at Sprouting Change. We are an organization that is working to get nervous system education into businesses so that they can run a little bit smoother. My presentation today is going to go over some of my own journey as an entrepreneur, as well as a bunch of neuroscience that really underscores the current of what you are doing, whether you are a business of one or a business of 10,001. These are things that are playing out in your business every single day, and I'm excited to share with you some of these things and hope that we can help to ease some of the natural drag and stress that comes from business. So let me go ahead and share my presentation, and we will get rolling. All right, can everybody see my screen okay? Yep. All right. Awesome. All right. So, as I said, today we're going to be talking about a hidden current that's running through your business. And this hidden current is actually within all of us, regardless of whether you're at work or at home or at play. This piece of you is playing out, but it can play out in business particularly impactful. And we're here today to kind of demystify that a little bit and to give you some skills for how you deal with that. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. As I said, my name is Laurie Sharp-Page. I am a licensed clinical counselor. I've been practicing as a clinical counselor for over 15 years now. I am a co-founder of Sprouting Change, and former founder and CEO of another local organization called Flourish Psychotherapy here in Cincinnati. We were a multi-site behavioral health practice with multiple specialties across the state, and it was a great experience. I have since sold that business and have moving on to this next venture, which is really to take a lot of the educations and the learnings that I've learned from that experience and package them into very digestible formats so that people can have a better time at work. I was very lucky when I was running my Flourish team because most of my employees were clinicians. Everyone was very well equipped. And I even remember thinking somewhere probably in 2018, 2019, how lucky am I to be running a team that really knows how to manage stress and to deal with things effectively. And that was true up until a point. But as we're going to go through this journey, I'm going to show you where that kind of broke down, as well as my key lessons and insights that I learned along the way. And again, if you do have any questions at any point in time as we're going through, if you can send them through the chat, someone will make sure that I'm aware and I'll be happy to answer them. The truth is that stress shows up. Regardless of what you do, stress is going to show up. Stress particularly shows up in business and organizational settings. Anytime we're bringing more than one person together, there's going to be natural stress. So we can't stop the stress. We can't make it not a thing. We can't control it to pieces. We have to accept that stress is going to show up. But there's another part of this equation that I think we're less familiar with, which is the fact that our capacity, our emotional state, how we show up, how we walk in the door, well, that impacts how we respond. And when it comes to business, there's a contagion effect to all of this. So the more you have people responding in ways that are detrimental to your organization, the more challenges you're going to have. And the more that you have people that are showing up in ways that are actually effective and helpful to the organization themselves, the more that is going to spread as well. And we at Sprouting Change like to say emotional endurance, which is your ability to really manage your nervous system and adapt it and coach yourself through challenging moments, is the hidden operational infrastructure of modern business. And the reason why we're not talking about this is because there hasn't been as much language as there is before, as much science and data to inform the points that I'm about ready to share with you. But the truth is that even regardless of this information, the pattern has always been playing out. There's pressure in business, and your systems, depending on how attuned or not attuned they are, will respond to that stress in an either reactive or responsive way. And a reactive way is much more challenging overall. We want to try and keep people out of that state. And I'll explain a little bit more what that means as we go through. But the key here is that we're not trying to get away from stress. We're not trying to make it all go away. We're trying to find ways that our organization can build the resilience it needs to operationally maintain and sustain regardless of the stress. We all bring our nervous systems to work. Every single human with a brain has a nervous system. And our nervous system is something that we are increasingly starting to understand how impactful it is. Every person on your team, in your community, is showing up in their nervous system. For better or for worse, that is a natural, expected part of how humans show up. And together, these nervous systems create the operational climate. So if the nervous systems of your team or even leadership, such as yourself, are not attuned to the stressors that you can expect from business, you're going to run into some additional challenges. And I, and us at Sprouting Change, want to help you guys turn down the volume on that emotional friction so that you can do what you actually need to do, get work done. Sound good? All right. The truth is that most businesses think that they have problems, right? There's probably no business owner or leader out there who says, my business is completely perfect. They'll see things like communication problems, burnout problems, leadership problems, culture problems, morale problems, engagement problems, and they'll put these in these little siloed buckets. Now, the problem with this is that all of these are symptoms. These are the smoke of emotional dysregulation within your organization. And what we want to do at Sprouting Change is we want you to help you to identify the actual fire underneath, emotional dysregulation. Now, I'm going to define that term for you in a minute. It probably brings up some ideas, some thoughts of what that might be, but emotional dysregulation is not inherently bad. It sounds bad, but it's not inherently bad. It is a state of being that our nervous system can default to. And when we, as a group, are allowing our state of being to default to that over and over and over, it creates a lot of these communication problems, morale problems, culture problems. And we assume it's just that. But the problem is, if we don't address the state underneath it, we never really solve the problem. And this is why I think a lot of organizations get burnt out themselves on things like wellness programming, leadership training, communication objectives. These are all important things. But if we're not addressing the state underneath it, we've missed an entire cause of what is making these symptoms flare. Because underneath all of this, in any business, we have a hidden operating system. It's the nervous system of yourself and everyone else that shows up to work for you. And so the question is your macro, is your group nervous system, the nervous system of your organization, is it reactive or is it responsive? Reactive is much more defensive. It's coming from a place of trying to Control, to deflect, very short term, very quick thinking. Responsive is able to look at the entire picture, being able to understand all the different pieces that go into play and how they all impact everybody. And all of this comes together to create either an adaptive or a rigid organization and a regulated or chronically overloaded organization. Now, I'm not going to ask anybody to raise any hands here, but I will tell on myself. And the truth is I've worked for several reactive, crisis-oriented organizations over my time. And what I find consistently in these organizations is that you're feeling like you're doing a lot, but not a lot is getting done. And the reason for that is because everybody is just reacting to what is versus looking at the bigger picture. What are the values? What are the vision? What are the goals? And what are the tools that we have at our disposal to utilize these? If you are struggling with an organization that is in crisis all the time, that is a great sign right there that something is off about the nervous system of your organization. And the way that we address that is by looking at all the different nervous systems that are showing up to work, yours included. Emotional states are not separate from operations. And I know we want to separate business from emotion. I get that that is a desire and a goal. And I think we can do that to a certain point, but that can't be done until we acknowledge the real impact that emotional states have over our ability to get work done. Because there's two operating states of team. And this goes back to the two operating states that you yourself as a human can be in. The nervous system has two tracks and it is always seeking safety. Now I put safety in quotes here because safety is perceived. Safety is a sense that I am safe enough to bring my ideas to work. I am safe enough to tell somebody if I don't understand something and I need help. I am safe enough to be comfortable, not necessarily being my full authentic self at work, but bringing at least my comfort level to do the job with the skills that I have. People need to feel safe at work. Now, this is a very triggering thing because I think a lot of us have not felt safe at work for any number of times throughout our career. And I think that that idea of safety can be something that really puts people on the defensive. But I want to go ahead and reduce some of the emotional friction you may have around this idea of psychological safety right now by understanding that safety is a perception. If someone feels safe or they don't feel safe, they will communicate that to you either directly or most likely indirectly. And you can start to notice a little bit in their behaviors how they're feeling. Now, the nervous system, its job is to keep, and the brain really, its job is to keep us alive and to keep us safe. And sometimes it will see things that it presumes are unsafe and they're actually fine. A good example of this is public speaking. A lot of people will find that public speaking is very triggering to them. It will default them into what we call our sympathetic or dysregulated nervous system state, which is I sense that there is a threat here. Now, most of us know that usually with public speaking, there is no real threat. It is just a fear, a concern. And so we can do things to shift ourselves out of that state. But that's a good example of somebody not necessarily feeling safe in a situation where I myself may feel very safe getting up there and walking in and doing this speech. Does that all make sense to you, the idea of safety and the perception of safety? Yes? Okay, great. So our nervous system has two tracks, our dysregulated, our sympathetic nervous system. If you've heard the term before, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, that is what that system is for. It is an acute system for particular times when there is a threat. We do not want to stay there forever. What I have found as a therapist over 15 years of practicing and in my own life, as far as taking care of myself, and part of what I'll kind of reveal as we go through with the story, it's very easy to get stuck in a state of dysregulation where your sympathetic nervous system is running the show. That is the reactive state. And in that state, you are geared up to fight. You are geared up to flight, which is to run away or to avoid. You are geared up to freeze, which is to shut down, not do the things that you know you need to do. Or you're geared up to fawn, which is people pleasing, which is a really not disempowered state to be coming from a business. So any of these states, they have their time, they have their purpose, but if they're chronically going on, it is becoming disruptive, not just to that individual, but to the organizations that they serve because it reduces their overall capacity. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right. The other side of this is our regulated state, our parasympathetic state. We call this the rest and digest state. Now, I understand as business owners and leaders, you may not feel super comfortable with the idea that you want your staff to be in a rest and digest state, but I'm telling you, that's exactly where you want them to be. It sounds like a relaxing state, but it's really more of a sustainable state. The brain is able to be fully powered on and to engage appropriately in the task and stressors at hand, because your state drives your behavior. Whether you walk into a situation with a trigger already dysregulated, dealing with something else, or regulated is going to influence how you respond to that trigger. So it's very important to know what state you're in and to be able to talk this language with your employees and team so that they can better understand what state they are in. All of this happens because our brain is actually operating differently in these two spaces. In our regulated, our rest and digest, information actually moves from the front part of our brain back. The front part of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, is a super important part of our brain. It's where things like our memories, our logic, our empathy, our holistic understanding and problem solving, all of that lives in the front of our brain. And so when we're in that rest and digest state, we're able to take in complex, challenging, even triggering information and metabolize it in such a way that we can make good decisions, we can have long-term vision, we can have empathy, and we can also control our own emotional response to this. When we are in a dysregulated state, our brain starts working totally differently. Right in the middle of our brain is a little chestnut called the amygdala. Anybody familiar with the amygdala? You heard that term before? The amygdala. The amygdala is our home of our fear response, okay? And so anytime we turn into a dysregulated or sympathetic nervous system state, the middle of our brain is running the show. Our fears, everything is going outwards instead of the information coming inwards. That is where the reaction comes from. We are trying to defend versus the responsiveness of a regulated state where we can take information in. And so what does this look like at work? Well, this can look like some very specific patterns: defensive communication, avoided conversations or feedback, leadership exhaustion, conflict escalation, chronic conflict. If you are having a team that is having the same problem over and over and over again chronically, there's dysregulation mixed into that. And this creates operational problems that are challenging, increased management load, customer escalation due to lack of team response or to the team's response, reduced adaptability, and decision fatigue. And over time, these patterns become operational norms, and managers often end up managing reactions instead of results. And that's where we get into a big mess. Because I learned this lesson the hard way. Business operations are challenged by pressure and your team's capacity to sustain it. So here's back to me, the founder story. We had all this great stuff going on, and then the pandemic hit. And all of a sudden, my very well-equipped team was under unique, sustained, uncertain pressure that was unprecedented. And I know everybody in here went through something similar with their teams. And so you know exactly what I'm talking about. All of a sudden, we were shifted into survival mode. We had very short-term thinking, and I, as CEO, I made mistakes. I found myself to be in a chronically reactive state. I had a hard time getting rest. I had a hard time not thinking about the ongoing stressors and uncertainty that we were facing. I started avoiding tough conversations and feedback. And most concerning, I tried to become everybody's therapist and regulator just so we could get work done. Now, I've talked to lots of businesses, and one thing I know is that there are a lot of unpaid, unlicensed therapists out there in your businesses trying to keep it all together just so we can get work done. Well, I'm here to tell you, even as a licensed therapist, this was a horrible idea for my business. I was just trying to survive and keep my head above water, and I figured if I could keep everybody else regulated enough, we could actually do what we needed to do, which was get work done so we could keep the lights on. This strategy did not work for me. Neither did avoiding the tough conversations or feedback, and neither did me living in a chronic state of stress. All these things harmed my business greatly. And what I found over time is that my team shifted from a space of being more responsive and endurant to more survival focused. I found them to be more reactive, defensive, and rigid. We were more focused on the short term, and there was more emotional dysregulation in our office. On the other hand, before and after I implemented some of the things I'm going to share with you today, we were able to have a more responsive, endurant brain. We were strategic and adaptable, solution focused, and we were able to find the sustainability to actually grow and scale the business overall. Our brain loves patterns, and you may have the most regulated business I've ever seen. You know, everybody under your roof may be doing exactly what they need to do to take care of themselves. And someone new comes in and they don't necessarily have those skills. And that can still put a drain on your business. It's important for every single person, especially leadership, but every single person in your business to understand this hidden current running through them and how it impacts their ability to show up and do the work that's needed. Because what happens to our brain under stress is that our brain prioritizes survival. I used the example of public speaking a minute ago. That is not an actual threat for most people. That is scary and it is challenging, but our brain will prioritize survival. And when it prioritizes survival, our focus gets very narrow. Our adaptability shifts into a more rigid stance so that we can deal with the perceived threat. This is why if you have something that you know is like triggering later on in the day, let's say you have an upcoming conversation or something that you know needs to happen and it's very stressful, your brain will start to kind of focus on it and ruminate on it and have difficulty thinking about anything else. And this is where that threat detection increases, your communication shifts, you're unable to really talk about or experience anything else besides that, and it changes how you make decision making. So you may, in that thought process of like thinking about a difficult conversation later in the day, you may at some point in time just convince yourself that you don't need to have that difficult conversation, right? Your smart brain may do something kind of dumb and decide you that the short-term effect of not having to deal with that discomfort is worth the long-term cost of not dealing with that discomfort. And I am unfortunately here to tell you that that is often not the case. Avoidance is the high-interest credit card of coping skills. Many of us chronically overuse it, and I would be really curious when you do. Now, there are times to use avoidance. I'll give you a great example. When you're waiting for the doctor to call you with some updates to your test results, that is a great time to avoid going to Dr. Google and finding out what the answers are. Wait and hear from your doctor. Avoidance is not always the wrong skill, but it is something that is chronically overutilized. And a lot of time, our own discomfort or our own dysregulation will encourage us to avoid things that really will be quite costly for us in the long term if we do. Does this all make sense to everybody, how the brain processes this? Great, wonderful. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a contagion effect to this. So if leadership is struggling with this, that will be felt throughout the whole organization as well. So we need to be mindful about how we as leaders are showing up and taking care of our own emotional regulation and dysregulation so that we can really help build the operational resilience that's required. Emotional dysregulation causes emotional friction, resulting in operational drag. And operational resilience requires us to address this issue head on. I think for a long time, we've wanted to separate emotions from work. And again, as I mentioned earlier, there's a time and place. There's certainly appropriate boundaries around emotions at work and how we deal with them. But by not dealing with them, by completely avoiding them, we create an opportunity for chronic dysregulation to create drag on every single system in our organization. Emotional friction at work looks like defensiveness, repeated conversations, delayed decisions, conflict avoidance, escalation, overdependence on leaders, and low adaptability. This all causes operational drag of slow execution, leadership exhaustion, customer friction, turnover, reduced innovation, stalled change, and decreased resilience under pressure. As I mentioned before, although this is a people-caused issue because it's created by all of our nervous systems, this is not just a people issue. This is a true operational issue. And there's a high cost to this not being dealt with. We've got slower decisions, reduced innovation, communication breakdown, leadership burnout, team exhaustion, and increased turnover. But the good news is work becomes less draining when we reduce emotional friction and emotional endurance, your ability to manage your own nervous system and to be able to speak that language with your team reduces the operational drag. And the operational drag is significant because this infrastructure ripples across your entire organization. From communication to customer experience to performance, leadership, adaptability, culture, your organization is shaped by the nervous systems inside of it. And emotional endurance shapes how your organization can control and train the capability to function under pressure. Now, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but as leaders, this is particularly impactful because your nervous system impacts your business. And I saw this firsthand in my own journey. Leadership spreads the state. Something like 2/3 of Americans say that their boss or the person that they report to at work has more influence over their well-being, their emotional well-being, than their spouse or significant other. Think about that. 2/3 of the American public feels that way. If you're showing up chronically dysregulated at work, and look, I'll be honest with you, I'm not ashamed of anything that I did at Flourish during this time because I did what I needed to do to survive. What I wish I could have seen then, and it's hard to see from the inside looking out, is that the very first thing that needed to be addressed was my own state. My own state. As the leader of the organization, I was in a hyper reactive state. Makes sense. You know, we signed the lease for our beautiful new office space in November of 2019, and we're shut down a week after we moved in March 2020. That was a huge threatening reality that I had to deal with, amongst many others. But what I wish I had seen and the clarity that I have now is that the whole system changed as soon as I attended to my own. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Your team absorbs pressure every single day. I'm simply saying that we need to make sure that they're equipped and that they understand the biological realities of absorbing that pressure. It's very easy, and I've seen this as both a clinician and as a leader, it is very easy for people to get stuck in chronic emotional dysregulation. There's so many triggers and stimulus and needs and just so much piled on top of people every single day that it is easy for people to get stuck there. And if you have multiple people stuck there, your culture, your morale is going to get stuck there. And that is going to cause you real challenges until you can help the team shift out of it. And emotional friction compounds quietly. Part of this is nobody expects to go to work and everything to be perfect. And I'm not suggesting that that's what we're trying to do here. We can't control things like that. But what we can control is encouraging people to speak up about the emotional friction and drag that they experience and to problem solve around it proactively versus just waiting until we're in a crisis situation where big decisions have to be made. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, as a leader, you cannot sustainably regulate an entire organization. I see this so much, and I see it because it's a place of care. This is part of how people care for their business. This is part of how they try and survive through difficult times. It's not inherently wrong. It makes sense how you get there, but it's going to cost you so much more to stay there. And my goal is to help you learn through my experience that you don't have to stay there and to learn some new ways to help yourself and your team. You cannot build sustainable performance with chronically dysregulated systems. I'll repeat that again. You cannot build sustainable performance with chronically dysregulated systems. And again, leaders, I'm looking at you, a bunch of entrepreneurs. I mean, I think entrepreneurs in general and founders and leaders of all types, we have certain behavioral characteristics that make us more geared up and wired for these things. But we have to understand that the foundation that we're building on has a real impact. And just because you're able to push through and scale for the first 10 years and make it through does not mean that you have built the appropriate foundation to continue to sustain under pressure. So eventually I got to a point about a year in, it was probably 2021, when I realized I couldn't do this anymore. Like I was on the edge. I wasn't sleeping. I had new babies at home that I was trying to take care of too. I had so much on my plate, and it was getting increasingly hard to get up and do it every day. And so I did some work within myself to kind of figure out what was going on. And I realized that a lot of this work that I do with clients, a lot of what you see in this presentation is the type of work I do with clients to help them understand their nervous system and how their nervous system impacts their day to day and their decision making and their functioning. It was really hard to see from the inside looking out, really hard to see our patterns from the inside looking out. But I was able to, in the dark, stumble upon the fact that I was trying to regulate for everybody, which was ultimately a dysregulated behavior. I want to say that again. I was trying to regulate for everybody, which is ultimately a dysregulating behavior. And as the leader, that was seeping into all aspects of my business. And I decided that the way to address this was to trying to be this everything for everybody and to work to empower my team to become equipped to deal with what was. Now, this is just kind of a funny thing with therapists. Everybody comes from different schools of thought, different modalities, different ways of approaching treatment. And I on my team was the neuroscience informed one, or what we call polyvagal informed and somatic experiencing. And so the first thing I did was I presented to my team my theory that we were all suffering from emotional dysregulation due to unprecedented circumstances. We were all dealing with a great deal of uncertainty, and that the only way for us to survive as an organization and to continue to grow the way that we need to grow is that we all, myself included, needed to take personal accountability for how we were showing up at work and whether we were showing up in a dysregulated state or regulated state, and then doing the work to make sure that we could get into a regulated state and stay in a regulated state. My job shifted from trying to regulate everyone else to equipping and providing my team with the radical personal accountability that I myself agree to as well, that when it comes to work, we are responsible for our own capacity. We are responsible for making sure that we are showing up regulated and able to engage. And this was the changing point. That little shift changed everything. We moved from a reactive organization to a responsive organization. Now, I will be clear, there are many steps in between here and there, and unfortunately, we don't have time to get into them all today. I will close with giving you a little sampling of some of the things that we did, but this runs deep. This goes down to basically how we really supported each team member to show up and take care of themselves in a way that would take care of the organization. And by shifting this from my own reactive state to a more responsive state, I was able to equip and support my team better. And I moved from individually managing people to collectively empowering, which was one of the best things I could do for my mental health and one of the best things I could do for my business at the time. We increased our adaptability. We became highly flexible and responsive to challenges. We created new internal referral systems. We created new groups, new opportunities for current clients. We created new ways of increasing our revenue and our stability in incredibly uncertain times because we shifted from a reactive space where all of our energy was just going to trying to maintain what was to a more responsive state where we were able to see the opportunity within the challenge. And I'm so proud to say that we were able to scale this business in this period of time. We moved from survival mode to scaling it 2.3 times in 3 years' time. And it's because the creativity and the adaptability and the responsiveness of my team and my ability as a leader to shift gears and really allow for them to be equipped to do their job and me to be equipped to do my job and to attend to the whole system in a more responsive versus reactive way. And what I found by doing this is that building emotional endurance across your organization is operational infrastructure. Creating a more collaborative, peaceful, and cohesive collective results in operational resilience. And that is what's needed right now. Before I head into the rest of the presentation, any questions, thoughts, concerns, everything making sense? All right, I got a thumbs up. All right. As I mentioned, I learned this lesson the hard way. But, sometimes those hard lessons bring us to something really amazing. And by doing so, I stumbled upon a better way of being for the whole team. We had less overall stress, reduced conflict, more peace and ease at work. We had better decision making, more solutions and innovation, and less wasted internal resources. And organizations can do this for their own team. As I mentioned, whether you're an organization of one or 10,001, this is all happening within your organization. And the way we address it is the same throughout. The first is we need to bring awareness to the situation. Part of what we do at Sprouting Change is we offer assessment as a way to help people understand the complex dynamics that contribute to their emotional endurance and help them to identify key ways to become less reactive and more responsive. We give nervous system education, similar to what I'm giving to you all today. We do skill building, which is something we'll do at the end of our session today, and then helping employees find support systems. If you were at the chamber event where we had the panel about a month back, I told everybody my hottest take about workplace wellness is that I don't think you should be getting your emotional needs met at work. And I stand by that. I think getting good feelings at work is a good thing, and you should celebrate that every time it happens. But completely investing your own emotional worth and needs into an organization doesn't make sense. It doesn't prepare you or the organization for success. Pardon me, those Cincinnati allergies, they get me every year. And so part of what you can do as a leader and a founder is to recognize that you cannot be that for everybody. You can provide your team with support. You can provide your team with encouragement. And part of that support and encouragement is making sure that they're connected to support systems beyond work. And that is a little challenging. That's part of the reason why Sprouting Change exists, is to act a little bit as the middleman to help support organizations. And then the final thing is practice, practice, practice. We are dealt stressors and triggers every single day, right? Can we agree on that? Every single day. There's never a day that goes by and you're not like, oh, well. There's always something. And I think when we reframe these to a more responsive view of this is something that I need to practice, this is a skill set, I'm growing through this, I'm responding to this a different way. This is really important, because this is how we develop a new state of being. It's also how we show others how to develop a new state of being. And as a leader, how you show up and how you model these things makes a real impactful difference in how they play out in your organization. As I mentioned before, the brain loves patterns, and a lot of times it'll default to reactive negative patterns because it's trying to keep us safe. But if reactive patterns can be learned and reinforced, then the opposite is true. Responsive patterns can be trained and practiced. And when you do so, the capacity of you as a leader and the capacity of your team increases wildly. Emotional endurance is the foundation of operational resilience, and we need operational resilience right now. We've got AI disruption, economic uncertainty, staffing challenges, rapid change, communication demands. It is all happening right now, and operational resilience needs to be the top concern you have. More than scaling, you need to figure out how to sustain first. And that is one of the other lessons I learned along the way as a leader in this. I had focused so much on scaling the systems that I forgot to attend to the operational resilience underneath it. And that's why when I was thinking in 2019, 2018, before the panic all happened, oh, how lucky am I? I don't have to deal with some of the other drama that a lot of other businesses have to deal with. I was wrong. I just wasn't digging into them because they didn't seem important. They didn't seem like a problem, and I assumed my team was equipped. Well, then the pandemic happened and it broke us all down to, well, I shouldn't say it broke us all down. It challenged us all in ways that we had to learn new skills and had to learn how we were showing up for work. And this was the key piece I missed. Operational resilience is so important to the well-being of you, your team, and the long-standing nature of your business. And so how do we move from reactive to responsible? Like I said, it's a lot of practice. practice, but a big part of that practice is just building your awareness to it. I will have done my job if a couple days from now you're doing something and you start thinking, wait a second, am I reacting or am I responding right now? Which, by the way, emotional dysregulation will feel a certain way in your body. Everybody has a different tell. For me, I feel a great sense of urgency, like everything has to get done right now. And if it doesn't get right now, the sky is going to fall, like Chicken Little. And I have this feeling like very much in my chest. I can identify it now. I have other ones. You'll have many. But I want you to take a second now and think about, like, how do you know when you're emotionally dysregulated? How do you know when your brain has shifted into another state? And if anyone feels comfortable, type it into the chat. I'd love to share with the group. But that is part of this is knowing and recognizing when you're in that state versus the other. And what you will find is that you will shift into that state more than once in a day. Okay. Our brain is hyper tuned to keep us safe. And that's why sometimes like your spouses like will say something and they'll say it in a certain tone. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's emotional dysregulation right there. Right there. So it's important to pay attention to it, to be aware of it. And that is ultimately how we shift our state. Is the first step is being awareness. Because stress will always exist inside your business. The question isn't whether the question is whether your team has the capacity to adapt with it without being reactive, rigid, or disengaged. A mostly responsive team can, and a mostly reactive team cannot. Now, I need to be really clear here. Responsive does not mean calm all the time. It doesn't mean that you don't feel negative feelings. It doesn't mean that like life is perfect and it's all live, laugh, love vibes all the time. No. Responsive means that your team can notice states, recover faster, and make good decisions under pressure because they are aware that they are in the right state to do that. They are aware that their brain is working in a way to be able to do that. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm going to show you just a little bit. This is just the tip of the iceberg of what we do at Sprouting Change, but we always like to leave people with tools, okay? So I asked you to think about how you know when you shift into a dysregulated state, all right? The tools I'm going to give you next are going to be tools that you can utilize to shift yourself back quickly to a more regulated state. These are kind of like hacks for your nervous system. They help your nervous system know that you're safe because you wouldn't be doing these things if you weren't safe, okay? Our nervous system, I know we weren't alive at the same time as dinosaurs, but our nervous system was basically geared up so that if a dinosaur came running at us, we would run away, right? We don't want to turn that part of ourselves off. I often will find with clients, like I'll tell them, you know, I would be more worried if you didn't have any anxiety versus having too much. We can turn down the volume of the anxiety. But if you have no anxiety at all, anxiety keeps us safe. It has a role in our life. Emotional dysregulation is that. It has a role, it has a time, it has a purpose. So we don't want to turn that off. We want that to be on so that it can respond to real challenges. And it can also let us know where the discomforts and emotional friction are in our life so that we can smooth it out. But sometimes we find ourselves in the middle of a meeting and we get triggered and we need to shift, okay? At least one of these skills is what I call a stealth skill, something that you can do without anybody else noticing. Some of them are a little bit more involved, but all of them will help you shift your state from a more dysregulated state to regulated. Now, again, this is just the tippy top of the iceberg for what this means for building emotional endurance for yourself and for your team. But these are a great starting place so that you can help start noticing your state and start shifting it intentionally. Sound good? All right. So I'm going to give you 4. The first one is my stealth one. I'll show you the not stealth way, and then I'll tell you about the stealth way. Bilateral stimulation. If anyone has heard of EMDR or somatic processing, these are therapeutic modalities. Bilateral stimulation is something that is utilized in both of those. And it is literally moving both sides of your body in opposing ways. So I'll show you right now on the screen. I'm going to tap my hands back and forth. This is an example of bilateral stimulation. When we do this, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere of our brain are asked to engage with each other. When we experience dysregulation, those two tracks get off. Doing bilateral stimulation for about 30 seconds to a minute will help to get it back on. Now, you can do this a lot of different ways. I'm just doing it this way just to show everybody. You can also do something like this. It's butterfly hugs. Obviously, it's not super stealth. Let me tell you the stealth way. I was doing a presentation last year, virtual presentation, about 500 people on the call. And Cincinnati allergies, it was May again. So Cincinnati allergies got the worst of me. And about 5 minutes into my hour-long presentation, I had a coughing fit that I could not stop. Could not stop it. I was the only presenter. I was in that lovely webinar view where you can't see anybody but yourself. And this was literally, I love speaking to people. I love getting to do these presentations. This is so much fun for me. This was my worst nightmare. I could not catch my breath. I was, the whole thing, just really bad coughing fit, tears, all the things. And in the middle of this, I realized that I was starting to get amped up and moving into dysregulation because I was really stressed out about this happening. And so what I started to do is I started tapping my feet back and forth. And I did tell the people that I was speaking to at the time that I am becoming emotionally dysregulated and I am working to regulate my state in a way that you can't see, but I will tell you at the end. And at the end of the presentation, I was able to get it back together. We got back online, the coughing stopped. Learned a lot from that experience, and I was able to tell them at the end how I regulated. And that made the difference of me being able to continue to provide that session in a quality way. If I had not have regulated that, I would have just rushed through it, tried to get done as fast as possible. But I was able to recenter myself even in the midst of some crisis and bring it back down. So bilateral stimulation is something that you can do very stealth. Just wiggling your toes, something that people will never see, something you can easily do in a meeting. Another one that is a little less stealth, but super useful is hot or cold temperatures. These things will help to reset your nervous system as well. If you're in a situation where you can take a very hot shower, a very cold shower during the workday, do that. If not, go wash your hands. As hot as you can take it, as cold as you can take it. Don't hurt yourself. But the whole idea is to kind of shock your system. And again, you need about 30 seconds to a minute of that, and that will help you to re-regulate. Gum chewing is another one. I'm not a huge fan of gum, but gum does have its place here because gum can help to reduce our cortisol specifically. And again, it has to do with that bilateral stimulation, and also you're stimulating the vagus nerve a little bit, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a second, but that's in your neck. And so gum chewing, especially the repetitive nature of gum chewing, can help to regulate your system. And then the final one, and this is my favorite one, and it's humming. And so when we hum, it actually stimulates that vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is our major nerve within our nervous system. It almost acts like the border patrol. All stimulation pretty much goes through it, and it can get really kind of backed up. And so by humming, we can work to release it. Now, I usually do this in a group with people, and I know you all have your microphones off, but I'll let you do it along with me, and hopefully you'll guess the song. But I'm going to hum a song, and when you know the song, hung along with me, and hopefully you'll all have to just tell me if you knew it or not. Hopefully you'll get it, and we're just going to practice here now. So good, so good, so good. Did you all get it, Sweet Caroline? One time, this last year, we were at Margaritaville down in Florida for a session, and I always use Sweet Caroline, but my business partner Crimson was like, we're at Margaritaville. You got to do Margaritaville. And so I hung Margaritaville, and I kid you not, an entire room of like 300 people did not know what I was humming. And that was another fun moment. So humming is something that can be super duper helpful. And it can be a fun way to kind of engage yourself, especially on a stressful day or in between meetings. Again, any of these skills, about 30 seconds to a minute, you will feel yourself either take a deep breath or a yawn, or you'll feel something else in your body shift. And that's how you will know when you've started to shift states. Now, again, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but think about what would be different if your entire team knew how to actively regulate and recover. I mean, this would change so much. It would clean up so much of the emotional friction mess that human collaboration just causes, right? And so part of what we are passionate about at Sprouting Change is making sure everybody is equipped with this information and everybody is held accountable. Because the truth of the matter is that we influence states, whether it's work, our community, our family, our relationships, we influence states depending how we show up. And I believe that we could change the world if we all worked a little bit more intentionally and had the accountability and the support and the structure to show up more regulated and responsive and resilient to what is. Because the real competitive advantage in the world now and for businesses into the future is for them to be able to adapt under pressure, to recover quickly, to stay collaborative during uncertainty and tension, and to remain responsive to the full picture instead of just reactive to the stressors that be. Emotional endurance is the missing operational infrastructure of modern business, and we want to be your partners in supporting it. So if you're ready to shift from reactive to responsive, please scan my QR code here and give me feedback. I really would like to know what you thought about the presentation, if it was helpful, not helpful. You can also sign up for a mailing list there. You can visit sprouting-change.com. We have a free assessment tool on there. And this will help you to assess your team's endurance as well. And if you're interested in doing your own, hey, Crimson, can we pop in the Sprouting Change Kits link for anybody that's interested in working on their own emotional endurance into the chat? We have an additional place for if you are interested as an individual to explore this information further as well. And then, of course, to follow and connect with us on LinkedIn. I'm Laurie Sharp-Page, and the business is Sprouting Change. And that is all I have for you today. And I am looking forward to, I'm newer to Hamilton. I'm new to the chamber this year. We're new to the chamber this year. Really looking forward to getting to know people and to support our local businesses to build the essential skills of operational resilience that are going to be needed for this next chapter of business. So I'm looking forward to connecting with you all. I super appreciate you guys coming on. I know 9 a.m. right after a holiday is challenging, but I so appreciate you all being here, and I look forward to getting to know you all and working with you more soon. And if anybody has any questions or anything, please feel free to pass them along. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, Laurie. That was awesome. I did have a question though. So I know a lot of businesses they do go through change. Some businesses more change than others. What would you say would be kind of like a mindset to give to a team going into a change? Some people handle change better than others. What would you say like a mindset would help them?
I think the growth-based mindset is really important. A lot of times people will see discomfort as inherently bad or negative. Change causes discomfort, okay? And discomfort, I mean, I don't need to tell you all, discomfort happens every day, right? It is part of our landscape. I think helping people become less reactive to discomfort and allowing for discomfort to be part of the natural process of growing towards something new. So I really like to make sure that people understand that growth and discomfort are two sides of the same coin. They're going to be present together, and to help people become less reactive to immediate distress and finding ways to cope with that and metabolize that and internalize that in a way that doesn't get in the way of them actually changing. A lot of times the discomfort that we have for change will keep us from changing, which puts us into more discomfort. And so really helping people to understand their relationship to discomfort before we go to that change and the role of that discomfort is really important.
I love that. Thank you. When you were giving the action items earlier, I was humming, tapping, and doing all of it all at once.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you see me walking down the street in Hamilton and I'm tapping and humming and everything, you can still stop me, but you know exactly what I'm doing.
I love that. Now, I think you guys have a podcast. Where can we listen to your podcast?
We do. So Crimson and I have a podcast called The Emotional Endurance Movement. We are on YouTube. You can find us there at Emotional Endurance Movement, and we are a mental health variety show. We try and bring a little levity, a little fun, and some games to the world of mental health and learning how to cope effectively with life stressors. Honestly, as a therapist, I'm so proud to be a therapist. I love working in the field. I do think the last 10 years, 15 years, we've gotten to this place of very pathology focused, kind of doom and gloom stuff around mental health. And there's actually like a lot of fun to be had when it comes to taking care of our mental health. And there's a lot of opportunity to look at this in a less doom and gloom and a more of a kind of what I was talking about with the growth and discomfort. Like these things might be uncomfortable, but how can they help us learn how to have a better state of being within our lives and within our communities?
Awesome. Thank you. And I will say, Lori Johnson wrote in the chat, she said, thank you. Great presentation. Felix Russo said, very informative. Thank you. What I would love to do is after this call, I would love to send a little bit of a recap. I did take some screenshots, especially your QR code with your contact information in there as well. We did have the pleasure of having Crimson and Lori at our panel discussion for our Southern Ohio Young Professionals group. Truly amazing, amazing takeaways. And it was a pleasure spending the morning with you guys. I appreciate you.
Yes, absolutely. We appreciate you all. And like I said, we're newer chamber members, so we're really looking forward to connecting with other small businesses and to help support the awesome things we have going on in Hamilton. We're such fangirls of everything going on up here. So, and I just saw Lori mentioned in the chat, our name of our podcast is the Emotional Endurance Movement.
Okay.
And Jason, I went ahead and dropped our link tree
Yeah.
that has all of the information so they can connect with us and the emotional endurance movement. It's in the chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. All right, so I will put this in the recap email. Appreciate you guys. Some upcoming events with the chamber. We're doing our golf classic on June 1st. We are sold out for that. It is always a fun time. We also have a ribbon cutting coming up for All Ate Up, one of Hamilton's favorite pizza spots. That's June 8th at 10 a.m. You can find us on our website, hamilton-ohio.com. We also have networking leads happening at All Ate Up a little bit later in June on June 16th. Y'all, thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone have a wonderful day. Thanks.